The fire safety bill, the key piece of post-Grenfell Tower legislation, becomes law today without the extra protections for flat owners that campaigners, peers and some MPs had wanted. The basic principle is that building owners pay for the costs of removing cladding, but they can pass that cost on to their leaseholders. Those living in taller blocks have access to a government fund. Kath Pinnock is a Liberal Democrat member of the House of Lords, whose amendment was defeated last night. Good morning, Baroness Pinnock.
Oh, good morning.
What would it have changed if your amendment had passed and if it had ended up becoming part of this bill?
Well, the key principle that we were trying to establish was that the government should come up with a scheme so that leaseholders and tenants, but leaseholders primarily, were not having to face these enormous bills that they are going to be given consequently because of this cladding crisis and construction scandal.
Whatever the height of their building?
Whatever the height of their building, because the government scheme does not cover all the problems that are now being revealed. The £5 billion fund, which is large, that the government has created to help remove the cladding, this dangerous cladding that caused the tragedy at Grenfell. It does not cover all cladding types. It does not cover. It is not large enough to cover all buildings. So some people are going to be faced with those bills.
There should be some kind of loan system coming in, of which we don't know the details yet, but that's what the government says is going to be available to people in that position.
Well, yes, they're saying for the lower rise, so-called lower rise, 6 stories or below blocks, they will have to pay up to £50 every month for who knows how long, for a very long time. But let's remember, this is not of their making. The leaseholders are the innocent victims in all this. They've done everything right and nothing wrong. And the government really does need to come up with a scheme that protects them from enormous bills. And we're talking enormous bills. £75,000. One leaseholder in Manchester has been presented with. 40,000 in Paddington in London. And that's after they've had the grant for cladding removal. They've still got these enormous bills which are impossible to pay.
Was there a different way that you might have worded the amendment that could have resulted in a different response? Because I'm struck by the fact that in February Boris Johnson did say to Parliament no leaseholder should have to pay for the unaffordable costs of fixing safety defects they didn't cause, because the housing ministers suggested that the amendments as put forward by the House of Lords would have meant that even minor work that a building owner was putting through, improving smoke alarms and things like that, would either be slower or not happen at all because they wouldn't be able to pass those costs on.
That was indeed a valid criticism of an earlier amendment that I tabled, and I changed the amendment last night to reflect that, so that the minor maintenance and repairs that would have to be done could have been passed on to leaseholders quite properly. But even then, the government has failed to respond to it. And as you rightly have pointed out, the Prime Minister himself gave a commitment in the House of Commons that leaseholders would not be having to pay unaffordable costs, in his words, of this cladding crisis.
Why did the Labour front bench in the Lords not support you on this?
If only I knew. It was thoroughly depressing, really. Because all along they have agreed with the arguments that I and others have made. I can only... you really will have to ask them, because who knows? For me, it was a matter of principle. Leaseholders should not have to pay these enormous costs. They haven't caused this crisis. Others have. The government should have put up the money and then recouped it from those who have done this shoddy workmanship that have created the problem.
Baroness Pinnock, thank you very much.